The first thing you need to know about my wife, Julia, is that she never met a lie she couldn't improve upon. The second thing is that I should have seen this coming from the moment her 18-year-old stepdaughter, Avery, moved back in with us, dragging her drama behind her like a broken muffler scraping asphalt. My name is Evan O'Rourke, and I used to be the kind of guy who believed in second chances, family loyalty, and the basic human decency of giving people the benefit of the doubt. That was before I learned that some people mistake kindness for stupidity, and that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones sharpening the knife for your back. It started on a Tuesday morning in March, the kind of gray Austin day that makes you wonder why you ever left Chicago. I was sitting at my kitchen table, laptop open, debugging code for my IT consulting business, when Avery waltzed in wearing pajamas that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Morning, Evan," she said, not looking at me, already digging through the refrigerator like she was mining for gold. "I need to talk to you about something important. I should have known right then." In my experience, conversations that start with, "I need to talk to you about something important," usually end with someone asking for money, confessing to a crime, or both. "What's up?" I asked, closing my laptop. Avery had been living with us for 3 months since dropping out of UT, and in that time, she'd perfected the art of making every conversation feel like a hostage negotiation. She turned around, holding a yogurt cup like it was evidence in a homicide trial. "Well, you know how I've been thinking about going back to school?" I did know. She'd been thinking about it the way people think about winning the lottery or dating celebrities. Lots of wishful thinking, zero actual planning. "Sure," I said carefully, and I found this amazing program. It's like exactly what I've been looking for. Digital marketing and social media management. The whole thing. "That sounds great, Avery. Where is it?" She sat down across from me, and I noticed she was avoiding eye contact, focusing instead on peeling the foil off her yogurt with the concentration of a surgeon. "Well, that's the thing. It's kind of expensive." Here we go, I thought. How expensive? $10,000. I blinked. $10,000 for a digital marketing course? It's not just a course, Evan. It's like a comprehensive program with mentorship and networking and everything. This could really change my life. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Avery had inherited her mother's talent for making outrageous requests sound reasonable, but she hadn't quite mastered the poker face that came with it. "Avery, you can learn digital marketing on YouTube for free. There are community college courses that cost a few $100s. What makes this program worth 10 grand? Her face flushed, and she started stirring her yogurt aggressively. "You just don't understand. This isn't some random online thing. This is serious. Professional." "I'm sure it is. What's the name of the company?" "Why does that matter?" "Because I'd like to research it before we talk about spending $10,000. She slammed her spoon down on the table. "God, Evan, why do you have to be so suspicious about everything? I'm trying to better myself here, and you're acting like I'm asking you to fund a pills deal." That's when Julia walked in, dressed for work in one of her power suits, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread titled, "Women Who Eat Their Young for Breakfast." "What's going on?" she asked, but her tone suggested she already knew. "I was just telling Evan about the program," Avery said, suddenly sounding younger, more vulnerable. "It was a neat trick. She could shift from entitled brat to wounded bird faster than most people could change channels." Julia poured herself coffee and sat down next to Avery across from me. United front. I had seen this formation before. "It's a wonderful opportunity," Julia said. "I think we should seriously consider it." "We?" I asked. "Julia, it's $10,000 for a program that Avery can't even name the company for." "Elite Digital Academy?" Avery said quickly. "There, happy?" I pulled out my phone and started typing. "Let me just look them up real quick." "Evan." Julia's voice had that edge to it, the one that meant I was about to step on a landmine. "Can't you just trust us on this? Avery has done her research. She knows what she wants." I looked up from my phone. "Julia, this is $10,000. That's not pocket change. I think a little due diligence is reasonable." "Due diligence," Avery repeated, rolling her eyes. "Listen to yourself. You sound like some corporate robot. I sound like someone who doesn't want to throw money away on a scam." The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Avery's eyes filled with tears, another neat trick, and Julia's expression went arctic. "A scam?" Julia said quietly. "You think your stepdaughter is trying to scam you? I think $10,000 for a digital marketing course sounds too good to be true. And you know what they say about things that sound too good to be true?" Avery stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Fine, forget it. I should have known better than to ask you for help. You've never believed in me anyway." She stormed out, leaving her yogurt behind like evidence of my cruelty. Julia watched her go, then turned back to me with the kind of look that could freeze heck. "That was unnecessary," she said. "Was it? Julia, we don't have $10,000 lying around. We've got the mortgage, your car payment, my business expenses. We have savings. We have emergency savings. For emergencies, not for mystery education programs." Julia stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "Sometimes I wonder when you became so cynical, Evan. That girl is trying to turn her life around. And instead of supporting her, you're treating her like a criminal. I'm treating her like someone asking for a significant amount of money without providing basic information about where it's going. She's family. Family doesn't mean we stop using our brains." Julia picked up her purse and headed for the door. "We'll discuss this later, when you've had time to think about what kind of person you want to be." And then she was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the lingering scent of her perfume and the growing certainty that I'd just walked into something bigger than a simple disagreement about money. I went back to my laptop and looked up Elite Digital Academy. The website looked professional enough. Sleek design, stock photos of diverse young people looking thoughtfully at laptops, testimonials that could have been written by the same person using different names. But when I dug deeper, things got murky fast. No physical address, no accreditation information, no faculty listings, just a lot of buzzwords about disrupting the digital landscape and unlocking your potential. The more I looked, the more convinced I became that Avery was either being scammed or trying to scam me. Neither option filled me with confidence about our family dynamics. That evening, Julia came home late, claiming she'd had to work through dinner on a personnel issue. She barely spoke to me, answering my questions about her day with the kind of monosyllabic responses usually reserved for hostile witnesses. Avery stayed in her room, emerging only to grab food from the kitchen, making sure to sigh dramatically whenever she saw me, as if my mere presence was a personal affront. By Thursday, the Cold War had escalated to the point where I felt like a stranger in my own house. Julia and Avery had formed an alliance that excluded me entirely, whispering to each other when they thought I wasn't listening, falling silent whenever I entered a room. That's when I decided to do what any reasonable person would do in my situation. I called my old partner from the police force. Ray Stetson had been my partner for 5 years before I left the force to start my IT business. He'd stayed on for another decade before retiring to become a private investigator specializing in insurance fraud and cheating spouses. If anyone could help me figure out what was really going on, it was Ray. We met at a diner downtown, the kind of place that still served coffee in heavy white mugs and didn't care if you lingered over your meal. "So let me get this straight," Ray said, cutting into his chicken fried steak. "Your stepdaughter wants 10 grand for a fake school, your wife is backing her play, and you're the bad guy for asking questions." "That's about the size of it." Ray shook his head. "Families. Give me a good old-fashioned homicide any day. At least with homicide, people's motivations are clear." "I don't think they're trying to homicide me, Ray." "No, but they're definitely trying to end something. Question is what?" He took a bite and chewed thoughtfully. "You want my professional opinion? That's why I'm buying you lunch. This isn't about school. 10 grand is too much for a scam, too risky, too obvious. But it's perfect for something else. Something they need cash for and can't get through normal channels." "Like what?" "Could be anything. Pills, gambling debt, legal trouble. Could be your wife's got a boyfriend and they need money for something. Could be the kid's pregnant and needs to pay for something her insurance won't cover. Point is, they need money and they need it in a way that doesn't leave a paper trail." The thought of Julia having an affair hit me like a punch to the gut, but I forced myself to consider it objectively. We'd been married for 6 years and things had been distant lately. She'd been working late more often, going out with friends on weekends, spending more time on her phone. "How would I find out?" I asked. Ray grinned. "Now you're talking my language, but Evan, you sure you want to know? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss." I thought about that for a long moment, staring out the window at the Austin traffic crawling by. Did I want to know? Part of me wanted to go home, write the check for Avery's fake school, and pretend everything was fine. It would be easier, simpler. But I'd spent 5 years as a cop, and once you develop the instinct for spotting lies, you can't just turn it off. Something was wrong in my house, and I needed to know what it was. "I want to know," I said. Ray nodded. "Okay, but we do this right. Legal, ethical, by the book. I'm not going to help you do anything that'll get us both in trouble." "Understood. First thing we need is information. Your wife's schedule, her friends, where she goes when she's not at home. The kid, too. We build a timeline, see where the gaps are." Over the next week, I became a student of my own family's habits. I paid attention to Julia's comings and goings, noted when she claimed to be working late, tracked her moods and behavior patterns. I listened to Avery's phone conversations, watched her social media, tried to piece together what she was really doing with her time. What I found was a masterclass in deception. Julia wasn't working late on Thursdays. She was going to a bar called the Broken Spoke, a dive on the east side that catered to bikers and blue-collar workers. Not exactly her usual scene. I knew because I followed her there one Thursday night, parking across the street and watching through the window as she sat in a corner booth with a man I'd never seen before. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, muscled, and covered in tattoos, wearing a leather jacket like it was a uniform. They sat close together, her hand on his arm, laughing at things that weren't funny enough to justify that kind of closeness. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching my wife flirt with a stranger, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak, not yet. It was the recognition that everything I thought I knew about my life was built on lies. The next day I called Ray. "I need you to run a background check on someone," I said. "What's the name?" I'd gotten his name from the bartender, who knew him as a regular. "Nathan Hayes. Goes by Outlaw. Rides a Harley. Hangs out at the Broken Spoke." Ray was quiet for a moment. "Evan, you sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm already on it, Ray. I just need to know where it leads." The background check came back 2 days later, and it was worse than I'd expected. Nathan Outlaw Hayes had a record going back 15 years. Assault, pills possession, theft, domestic violence. He'd done time in Huntsville, been out for 18 months, worked construction when he could find it. He was also, according to Ray's research, Julia's boyfriend from high school. The one she'd dated before she went to college, before she became the polished professional I'd married. Her first love, the bad boy she'd left behind when she decided to make something of herself. "Looks like the past came calling," Ray said when he handed me the file. "Question is, what does she want with him now?" I was about to find out. That Saturday, Julia announced she was going shopping with her friends Lisa and Tanya. She'd be gone most of the day, maybe grab dinner somewhere, don't wait up. It was the perfect opportunity to do some investigating of my own. I waited until her car was out of the driveway, then went to work. I'd installed some basic monitoring software on our home computer, perfectly legal since it was my computer in my house, and I'd been tracking her online activity. What I found was a digital trail of deception that would have impressed a professional con artist. Julia had been using encrypted messaging apps to communicate with Nathan. She'd opened a separate bank account that I didn't know about. She'd been researching divorce lawyers, looking up information about asset protection and spousal support. But the real bombshell was in her email drafts folder, a message she'd never sent, probably because she was too smart to put it in writing. But she'd written it, and that was enough. "Nathan, E is getting suspicious about the money. We need to move faster. Avery is ready to do her part, but we have to make sure he doesn't figure it out before we're ready. Once we get the 10K, we can start phase 2. Remember, this only works if he thinks it's his idea to leave. Love you." I read it 3 times before the full implications sank in. This wasn't just an affair. This was a conspiracy. Julia and Nathan were planning something, and Avery was in on it. The fake school wasn't a scam, it was bait. They wanted me to refuse to pay, to look like the unreasonable one. To give Julia grounds for divorce that would make me look bad, I printed the email and put it in a file folder, along with the background check on Nathan and screenshots of Julia's secret bank account. Then I sat in my home office, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and tried to figure out what to do next. The old Evan would have confronted Julia directly, demanded an explanation, tried to work things out. But the old Evan hadn't known he was married to a woman who could plan his destruction with the precision of a military campaign. The new Evan, the one who was just being born in that moment, had a different idea. If Julia wanted to play games, I'd play games, but I'd play by my rules, not hers. I called Ray. "I need your help," I said, "and I need it to be completely off the books." "What do you have in mind?" "I'm going to give my wife exactly what she wants, and then I'm going to make her regret it." The plan was simple in concept, complex in execution. If Julia wanted me to look like the bad guy, I'd play the part, but only until I was ready to flip the script. I'd refuse to pay for Avery's fake school just like they expected. I'd be unreasonable, suspicious, controlling. I'd give them all the ammunition they needed to paint me as the villain. And while they were busy congratulating themselves on their manipulation, I'd be gathering evidence of their real plan. Ray helped me set up surveillance equipment in my own house, legal since it was my property, but sophisticated enough to capture everything. We put cameras in the common areas, audio recording devices in the kitchen and living room, keystroke loggers on the computers. If Julia and her conspirators wanted to plan my downfall in my own home, they were going to do it on camera. The next Monday morning, I put on my performance. "I've been thinking about Avery's school situation," I announced at breakfast, making sure my voice carried just the right note of condescension. "And I've decided the answer is no. Absolutely not." Avery looked up from her phone, eyes wide with what looked like genuine surprise. Either she was a better actress than I'd given her credit for, or she didn't know the full extent of her mother's plan. "What do you mean, no?" she asked. "I mean, no. We're not spending $10,000 on a fake school. I mean, no, I'm not going to enable your fantasy that you can buy your way to success. I mean, no, this conversation is over." Julia set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Evan, we discussed this. You discussed it. I listened. Now I'm deciding. And I've decided that Avery needs to learn the value of hard work, not handouts." "It's not a handout," Avery said, and now there were tears in her eyes. Real ones, as far as I could tell. "It's an investment in my future. Your future is going to have to be built on something more substantial than a $10,000 certificate from a company that doesn't exist." That's when Julia played her ace. "Maybe we should consider counseling," she said quietly. "I'm concerned about your attitude toward Avery, toward our family." I looked at her across the breakfast table, this woman I'd loved for 6 years, and marveled at how smoothly she could lie. How easily she could turn my reasonable concerns into evidence of my character flaws. "My attitude is fine," I said. "My attitude is that we're not throwing money away on a scam." "It's not a scam," Avery shouted, standing up so fast her chair fell over. "God, Evan, why do you hate me so much?" "I don't hate you, Avery. I'm trying to protect you." "Protect me? From what? From trying to better myself? From having dreams?" She ran out of the room, leaving Julia and me alone. Julia studied my face for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. "This isn't like you," she said finally. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do." That evening, after Julia had gone to bed, I reviewed the day's recordings. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions and gave me hope at the same time. Avery had called her mother at work, crying, saying she didn't want to do this anymore, that she felt bad about lying to me. Julia had told her to stick to the plan, that it would all be worth it in the end. Then Julia had called someone, Nathan I assumed, and told him they might need to move to Plan B sooner than expected. But the most interesting conversation had happened between Julia and her friend Lisa. Julia had asked Lisa to be ready to testify in divorce proceedings about my controlling behavior and financial misuse. Lisa had agreed, but she'd sounded uncomfortable about it. I had them. Not completely, not yet, but I had enough to start building my case. The question was how to use it. The answer came to me the next morning when Julia announced that she'd made an appointment for us to see a marriage counselor. "I think we need professional help," she said over breakfast. "This conflict over Avery's education has revealed some deeper issues in our relationship." I almost laughed. She was so good at this, so smooth in the way she could reframe reality to suit her narrative. In Julia's version of events, I was the problem. I was the one who needed fixing. "Fine," I said. "Let's go to counseling." She looked surprised. She'd expected me to refuse to give her another piece of evidence for her case against me. "Really? Really, I think it's a great idea. I think we should get everything out in the open." The marriage counselor was a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Patricia Reeves, who specialized in communication issues and family dynamics. Her office was decorated with inspirational posters and plants, the kind of place designed to make you feel safe enough to reveal your deepest secrets, which was exactly what I was counting on. "So," Reeves said, settling back in her chair with a notepad, "what brings you here today?" Julia launched into her prepared speech about my unreasonable behavior, my controlling tendencies, my refusal to support Avery's educational goals. She was articulate, persuasive, and completely convincing. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed her myself. When she finished, Dr. Reeves turned to me. "Evan, how do you respond to what Julia has shared?" I took a deep breath. This was my moment. "I think my wife is having an affair," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Julia's face went white, then red, then white again. Dr. Reeves looked like she'd been slapped. That's quite an accusation, Dr. Reeves said carefully. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. Her lover's name is Nathan Hayes. He goes by Outlaw. They've been meeting at a bar called the Broken Spoke every Thursday night for the past 2 months. Julia found her voice. That's insane. Evan, what are you talking about? I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila folder. I'm talking about the private investigator's report. I'm talking about the photographs. I'm talking about the background check on your boyfriend, who, by the way, is a convicted felon with a history of domestic violence. I handed the folder to Dr. Reeves, who opened it with the expression of someone who'd just been handed a live grenade. Evan, Julia said, and her voice was shaking now. I can explain. Can you explain the secret bank account? Can you explain the encrypted messaging apps? Can you explain why you've been researching divorce lawyers? Dr. Reeves cleared her throat. Perhaps we should take a step back. Can you explain, I continued, looking directly at Julia, why Avery's fake school is really just a way to make me look unreasonable so you can claim financial misuse in divorce proceedings? Julia's face crumpled. For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked genuinely defeated. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough. Dr. Reeves set the folder aside. I think perhaps individual counseling might be more appropriate at this point. Julia was crying now, not the manipulative tears she'd used to get her way, but the raw, ugly crying of someone whose carefully constructed lies had just collapsed around her. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. It was just, Nathan came back into my life, and I remembered who I used to be before I became this person, this corporate wife with the perfect house and the perfect husband. I remembered what it felt like to feel alive. So you decided to destroy our marriage. I decided to find a way out that wouldn't leave me with nothing. There it was. The truth, finally. Julia hadn't fallen back in love with her high school boyfriend. She'd made a calculated decision to trade up, but she wanted to do it in a way that would maximize her financial gain and minimize her risk. What about Avery? I asked. How did you get her involved in this? Julia wiped her eyes with a tissue. She needed money. Real money, not for school. She owes people, bad people. I told her if she helped me, I'd take care of her debts. What kind of debts? Gambling, online poker. She's in deep, Evan. Deeper than $10,000. I felt something shift in Darla. Avery wasn't just a willing conspirator. She was a victim too, trapped between her mother's manipulation and her own mistakes. How much does she owe? $30,000. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this new information. $30,000. No wonder Avery had been willing to go along with Julia's plan. No wonder she'd seemed genuinely upset when I'd refused to pay for the fake school. So the plan was to get $10,000 from me. Then what? Julia's voice was barely above a whisper. Then I was going to file for divorce, claim you were financially controlling and try to get enough in the settlement to cover the rest of Avery's debt. And Nathan? Nathan was going to help me start over. We were going to leave Austin, go somewhere new. I looked at this woman I'd been married to for 6 years, this stranger who'd been living in my house, sleeping in my bed and planning my destruction, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a cold, clear understanding of what needed to happen next. Dr. Reeves, I said, standing up, I think we're done here. I walked out of the office, leaving Julia crying in her chair, and drove home to plan the next phase of my revenge. But first, I needed to have a conversation with Avery. I found her in her room, lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She looked younger than 18, vulnerable in a way that made my chest tight. We need to talk, I said. She sat up, wiping her eyes. Mom called. She told me what happened. Good. That saves me some time. How much trouble are you really in, Avery? She looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to keep lying or finally tell the truth. A lot, she said finally. More than 30,000. Mom doesn't know the real number. What's the real number? 50,000, maybe more. I kept doubling down, trying to win it back. It just kept getting worse. I sat down on the edge of her bed. Who do you owe it to? Some guys in Dallas? They're not nice guys, Evan. They've been calling, texting, making threats. They said if I don't pay by the end of the month, they're going to come here. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you come to me for help instead of going along with your mother's plan? Avery started crying again. Because I was ashamed. Because I knew you'd be disappointed in me. Because Mom said you'd never understand, that you'd just judge me like you judge everyone. I don't judge everyone, Avery. But I do expect people to tell me the truth. I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Evan. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was a scared kid who'd made some bad choices and gotten in over her head. Okay, I said, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to help you, but we're going to do this my way, not your mother's way. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to pay your debt, all of it. But in exchange, you're going to help me make sure your mother and Nathan face the consequences of what they've done. Avery's eyes widened. You want me to testify against my own mother? I want you to tell the truth. Finally. Completely. No more lies, no more schemes, no more manipulation, just the truth. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. What happens to Mom? That depends on her. She can come clean, apologize, and try to work out a fair divorce settlement. Or she can keep playing games, in which case I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who she really is. And Nathan? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Nathan is going to learn that some people are harder to intimidate than he thinks. That night, after Julia came home and locked herself in our bedroom, I called Ray. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. I've got Julia dead to rights, and Avery's agreed to cooperate, but I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to pay a visit to Nathan Hayes. I need you to explain to him that his little scam is over, and that if he's smart, he'll disappear before things get unpleasant. Ray was quiet for a moment. Evan, what exactly are you planning? I'm planning to give my wife and her boyfriend exactly what they deserve, but I'm going to do it legally, ethically, and with maximum impact. That sounds ominous. It should. The next morning, Julia tried to act like nothing had happened. She made breakfast, chatted about the weather, asked about my work schedule. It was surreal, watching her pretend that our marriage hadn't exploded the day before. We should talk, she said as I was getting ready to leave for work. Should we? About yesterday, about what happens now. I looked at her, standing there in her silk robe, still beautiful, still trying to manage the situation, and I almost felt sorry for her. What happens now is you move out, I said. Today. This weekend at the latest. Evan, please, can't we work this out? Can't we try to save our marriage? Our marriage died the moment you decided to conspire against me with your ex-boyfriend. What's left now is just paperwork. She started to cry again, but this time I didn't feel anything. The tears that had once moved me to comfort her now looked like just another manipulation tactic. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Nathan has a place. I'm sure he'd be happy to have you. That afternoon, Ray called with an update on his conversation with Nathan. Interesting guy, Ray said. Real tough talker until I showed him the file we've compiled on him. Amazing how quickly tough guys become reasonable when they realize they're not dealing with amateurs. What did he say? He said it was all Julia's idea. Said she came to him, told him she wanted out of her marriage, asked for his help. He swears he was just going along with it to help an old friend. Do you believe him? I believe he's scared. I believe he knows he's in over his head. I believe he's going to do whatever it takes to stay out of jail. Good. What about the gambling debt? I made some calls. Turns out Avery's creditors are very interested in getting paid and not particularly interested in where the money comes from. They're willing to accept a lump sum payment and call it even. How much? $60,000 total. They're adding interest and fees, but that's the final number. $60,000. It was a lot of money, but I had it. My IT business had been successful, and Julia and I had been careful savers. Ironic that the nest egg we'd built together was going to be used to clean up the mess she'd helped create. Do it, I said. Pay them. You sure about this, Evan? That's a lot of money to spend on a kid who lied to you. She's not just any kid. She's family. And family takes care of family, even when family screws up. That evening, I sat Avery down and told her the debt was handled. The relief on her face was so intense it was almost painful to watch. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. I'll pay you back, I swear. Yes, you will. You're going to get a job, a real job, and you're going to pay me back $50 a week until it's done. It'll take you about 23 years, but you'll do it. She nodded eagerly. Absolutely. Whatever you want. What I want is for you to understand that actions have consequences. What I want is for you to learn that when you make a mistake, you own it and you fix it. You don't lie about it. You don't try to scam your way out of it, and you don't drag other people into your mess. I understand. Do you? Because your mother's about to learn the same lesson, and it's not going to be pretty. Julia moved out that weekend, taking only her clothes and personal items. She didn't ask for anything else, which was smart of her. I'd made it clear that if she wanted to fight over assets, I was prepared to make our divorce very public and very ugly. She went to stay with Nathan, which lasted exactly 2 weeks before she called, crying, asking if she could come back. It's not what I thought it would be, she said. He's not the person I remembered. Funny how that works, I said. People change, or maybe you just never really knew him in the first place. Please, Evan. Can we try again? Can we go to counseling, work on our problems? Our problems were that you're a liar and a manipulator who tried to destroy me for money. Counseling can't fix that. I made a mistake. You made a choice, multiple choices, over months. That's not a mistake, Julia. That's a pattern. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from me? I want you to sign the divorce papers without fighting them. I want you to admit what you did to our friends, to your family, to anyone who will listen. I want you to take responsibility for once in your life. And if I do that, then I'll be generous in the settlement. You'll get enough to start over, but not enough to reward you for what you tried to do to me. And if I don't, then I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you're capable of. I'll make sure your employer knows about your conspiracy to commit fraud. I'll make sure Nathan's parole officer knows about his involvement in your scheme. I'll make sure there are consequences for both of you. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, she signed the papers. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Julia got 30% of our assets, which was fair given the circumstances. She moved to Houston, got a new job, and as far as I know, never spoke to Nathan again. Nathan, meanwhile, found himself the subject of intense scrutiny from his parole officer after Ray provided some information about his recent activities. He didn't go back to jail, but he did leave Austin, and I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved back in with his mother in Lubbock. Avery stayed with me. She got a job at a local coffee shop, enrolled in community college, and started paying me back $50 a week, just like she'd promised. She also started seeing a therapist to deal with her struggles with gambling, which turned out to be more serious than any of us had realized. I'm proud of you, I told her one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. For what? For doing the work. For facing your problems instead of running from them. For choosing to be better. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I went along with Mom's plan. I know you are. Do you forgive me? I thought about that question for a long time. Did I forgive her? She'd betrayed me, lied to me, tried to manipulate me. But she'd also been a scared kid in over her head, manipulated by her own mother, trapped by her own mistakes. I forgive you, I said finally. But more importantly, you need to forgive yourself. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Lisa, Julia's old friend, at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, but she didn't try to avoid the conversation. How are you doing, Evan? She asked. I'm doing well. How about you? Good. I wanted to apologize. For what Julia asked me to do, I should have said no. You should have, but you didn't, and that tells me something about your character. She flushed. That's fair. I deserve that. Actually, you deserve worse than that. You were willing to lie under oath to help your friend destroy an innocent person. That's not just bad judgment, Lisa. That's evil. She started to cry. Right there in the cereal aisle? I know it was wrong. I've been feeling terrible about it ever since. Good. You should feel terrible, and you should learn from it. I left her standing there and went home to Avery, who was studying for her midterm exams at the kitchen table. How was your day? She asked, looking up from her textbook. Educational, I said. How about yours? Good. I made $57 in tips today, which means I can pay you back $57 instead of $50. Keep the extra $7. You've earned it. She smiled, and for the first time in months, it was a completely honest smile. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, the conspiracy, the revenge. I thought about Julia, probably lying awake in her apartment in Houston, wondering how her perfect plan had gone so wrong. I thought about Nathan, probably drinking beer in his mother's trailer, telling anyone who'd listen about how he'd been screwed over by his ex-girlfriend's husband. And I realized that I felt sorry for them. Not because they didn't deserve what had happened to them, but because they'd chosen to be the kind of people who would betray someone who'd trusted them. They'd chosen to be the kind of people who would manipulate and lie and scheme instead of just being honest about what they wanted. They'd chosen to be the kind of people who would destroy a family for money. And in the end, that choice had destroyed them instead. I turned off the lights and went to sleep. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Because I knew that sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys win. And sometimes the bad guys get exactly what they deserve.